This Les Paul is a little different. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. We are documenting one of my favorite Les Pauls again today. It all started as a message on my Facebook page. Hey, I've got this guitar. I know you like them. Would you like to buy it? To which I said yes. However, my offer would be less than what you're wanting. I would highly suggest putting it on Reverb, seeing if you can find an end user first. And I tell people that all the time because look, I buy for resale or I'm trying to get the best deal to add something to my collection. The only time I pay top dollar for something is if it is very rare. So he took my advice, he listed it, and somebody tried to scam him on Reverb. It was one of those typical, hey, I'll send you a check type thing. And they're hoping that you're going to deposit it into your bank. Your bank says, hey, everything's fine. You ship the guitar the same day. And then the next day you get a phone call from your bank saying, hey, this bounced. And then you're out your guitar. So he didn't want to deal with that anymore. Came back asking for $100 more. And it's like, okay, I like these things. It's almost Halloween time. We need to review it because it's been a good couple of years since we've talked about this. Despite this looking like a giant ES335 case, there is a oversized Les Paul beast sleeping in here. Of course, we're talking about the Buckethead model. Wow, that thing is nice and bright. Not all of them are. So in case this is your first time seeing one of these things, you're probably quite awestruck. This is not like any other Les Paul that you have ever encountered before. It's stark white, headstock, body, back, but then you're also noticing, hey, we've got these weird red buttons up here, as well as a red switch tip. There's no way it came stock from the factory, right? Nah, this is a signature model for an artist called Buckethead. Now, I first ran across Buckethead thanks to Guitar Hero. It was Guitar Hero 2 that had his song Jordan. And then from there, you can dive into the catacombs of his works. He literally has something for everybody. Like, if you're not a big fan of his big songs because you think they're like too shreddy or fast, he's got slow melodic offerings. Basically, he comes out with multiple albums every month. He is very active, but he had toured with Guns N' Roses. That first got him like his big mainstream push. I think I remember Ozzy almost like hired him, but he just thought his whole gimmick of the bucket and KFC was just a bit too strange. But, you know, if you can get past that, he has a very refreshing take on guitar because he can use these kill switches kind of as an alternate way of picking, and he just creates some really robotic sounds. He has great two-hand tap technique that just makes it sound like a machine malfunctioning. I'm personally a big fan of Buckethead's work, and I'm not alone. These Buckethead guitars have gone up exponentially in value and are in desperate need of a reissue. These are Baritone guitars. It's a 27-inch scale length. But you might be saying, hey, Trogly, it doesn't look that different. Usually baritone guitars, like the Baritone Les Paul Studio, they look strange with a giant neck. That's because the body is actually oversized on these things to compensate for it. And you gotta be careful playing these. It can ruin all other Les Pauls for you if you get used to this. Like if you're a big tall guy like me, or if you've always felt a Les Paul was just a little bit too small on you, give one of these things a try. I would be really excited if Gibson just came out with a new baritone oversized Les Paul, even if it doesn't necessarily have the Buckethead vibes, because then Buckethead fans can at least buy those, refinish them, and create their own to have some sort of an option. Because even chips and fakes, they never get the oversized body correct or the baritone scale, and that's what makes these things fun. But anyways, we've got two versions of these things. First introduced for the year 2010, your first one was the True Signature. That one has the binding on it. It's got the gloss finish, which is both a pro and con because everybody knows white Gibson finishes age yellow, so the whole point of the Buckethead Les Paul is that it's really striking and white and spooky, so when it becomes pea yellow, it's not the exact same look. But then for the year 2011, they followed it up with the Studios. These guys have the satin finish. They've got a baked maple fretboard, which kind of looks strange at first, but baked maple boards are so velvety smooth, I love them. And then if you want to get really nitty gritty, the Signature has a slightly larger nut width at 1.715, whereas the Studios have a 1.695, and the Studios have a 5-degree neck pitch, whereas the True Signatures have a 4-degree. Even though old spec sheets will say the True Signature has a rich light fretboard, only very, very, very ultra late produced ones would have that. I have yet to see a rich light fretboarded one. This happened right when the government raids came in, making certain woods hard to use, so they just updated the spec sheet online. Along similar lines, very, very early Buckethead signatures have a different binding number. They changed it throughout the run, and the early ones also had locking Grover tuners versus the locking Schallers, but that's like really nitty-gritty information that most people don't care about. So to learn more about this one, let's go ahead and throw it on the workbench to take a look at its parts and specs. Inside Mr. Bucket, let's check out these pickups. So it is a common phenomenon. Sometimes these pickups age differently. I think it's because they were using different bobbin materials. For example, you see how this one has more of like a grayish white to it? Then the neck pickup is a little bit more piercing and striking. That is a natural occurrence here, but it's the 496R in the neck. Doesn't have any particular markings on it. And then it's the 500T ceramic humbucker in the bridge. Bridge pickup reads 14.91, neck position 8.47, and middle just for fun 5.5. Inside the neck pickup cavity, it reads SW for satin white. And this was Gibson USA produced, so no long neck tenon. There's some interesting stuff in here. So LPBHS, Les Paul Buckethead Studio. But you have to remember, this is an oversized chambered body. So you can actually see some of the chambering right there. And of course, all your good Henry J. era splintering of the woods. So when I say oversized, it's a 10 and then a 14-inch bout, and then about 19 long from where the neck meets the body. So they basically took a regular Les Paul and made it 1 inch wider. Here's a look at the bridge. You've got the PW branding over here. It's just your regular Nashville style. And here's our tailpiece, advanced plating incorporated. The stock from the factory, you do not have a pick guard on these, but trust me, I've seen some crazy people install them. So normally on a Les Paul, your toggle switch is up here, so those have been swapped, so you have 2 kill switches depending on which one you want to use, but they do the exact same thing. The button itself is just under 20 millimeters, whereas the surround is about 16.5. And the reason why people ask that is they want to modify their guitar because these are too expensive, but there's a 30 and a 24 millimeter size, so you want the 24. And then as far as your actual controls, this is a master volume for both pickups, and then this is a master tone for both of them. However, on your tone pot, you have the option to pull it up to give you coil split tones. The Buckethead Les Paul is one of the few to actually get a red switch tip. Unfortunately, if you break one of these, it's hard to find a Gibson-sized one. That's the case with this. Somebody bought a metric one and just reamed it out because when these things get shipped all over the world, as they inevitably change hands quite often, people don't take them off and then they splinter in shipping. That's right, if you ever ship a Les Paul guitar, take your switch tip off, put it inside the case compartment, otherwise they shatter. Construction, it's the same as every other Les Paul, maple, mahogany, but chambered out. It's just a little bit bigger. Moving on to the neck, these frets shined up perfectly. It's nice to have one of these like that. And I remember when I first started to get into these guitars, I hated the studios because baked maple, that looks so weird, but I've come to really love baked maple fretboards. A, you get really cool wood grain on them, like on this example. And B, they're just so velvety smooth. I actually prefer the playability of the Studio over the true signature standard. And for a long time, this is what Buckethead ended up playing. Ultimately, I do still prefer the jet black ebony fretboard of the true standard. But another cool thing about Buckethead, besides being a baritone scale length, is it is a full 2-octave 24 fret scale with a 27-inch scale length. And I want to point out that's a true 27-inch scale length. A lot of times Gibsons, you actually have to take it from like the middle of the nut to get the advertised scale length, but that is directly from the edge. So that must have been Buckethead saying, hey, this needs to be exactly 27. Let's go ahead and grab our measurements. We get a 43 millimeter nut, then increases to approximately 54 millimeters. First fret neck depth, 0.9, and by the 12th an even 1. Here's the neck profile on the contour gauge. Very rounded as you start, but you do get a little bit of a flat spot the higher up you go on the neck. It certainly has a nice roundedness to it. I wouldn't really call it big baseball bat chunky, but it goes on forever, so you just don't notice it as much. Now the satin finish does stand proud of the neck, so there is a little bit of a ridge along the edge. That's pretty common on these. What I really like about this fretboard, I'm not going to be able to show it to you here, but the edge of the baked maple board has like a flamed figuring pattern to it, like it dances in the light, and that's the first time I've seen that on one of these. Must have just been the way that the board was cut. Now moving on to the face of the headstock, you can see the white that it started life as. So our satin finish does slightly yellow, but nowhere near as much as the true signatures with the gloss finish. But that's what our truss rod looks like, and both versions of these just have a black Gibson decal. However, it's important to note that you do have, I wouldn't call it a black binding, it's more so the headstock veneer that they put on it was likely just black, and then they spray painted over the top white, so it kind of gives you a slightly bound effect. The true signatures have a slightly bolder one.
The truss rod cover is just your regular black one, 2-ply. So you tell me, does the black side or the white side look better? Another common question that people ask me about these is, since they're baritone scale length, do I have to down tune these? Is it bad for the guitar to tune it to standard pitch? No, I always run these things standard. They can obviously do lower tunings very well. You might have to widen out your nut slots. But do not be scared to tune this up to standard pitch. It still does it just fine, and that's what most of Buckethead's stuff is anyways. And it does not require special strings. Regular length ones fill it out just fine. If you need to get even lower than that, check out the Les Paul Studio Baritone. That one has a 28-inch scale length. See? Standard tuning. Perfectly fine, doesn't feel like you're overstretching it. But the nice thing about it being an extended scale length is if you want to use extra heavy gauge strings, you can. Now those ones you might not be able to tune up quite as much. And since your bridge spacing is the same, if you ever feel that you run off the fretboard, these have just that little bit of extra width to it, where the strings are a little bit more inward than other Les Pauls. Moving on to the backside, let's take a look at the electronics. Here you can see the style push-pull pot that they were using before they switched over to the black-backed one. I definitely prefer these myself. And this is our 3-way toggle with our single regular Gibson branded pot and the Sanwa brand kill switch. Looks like we have an employee sign-off RC in this one, and then a BH branding. As with most Gibson USA chambered Les Pauls, you do not have access to the chambers. And here's our other Sanwa kill switch. Overall, this one's not in too bad of shape, but we do have a little bit of finish wear right here. You can just use a little bottle of white out to touch up most of those. Because unlike the true signatures, as we've been talking about, the clear coat doesn't age as much, so it's not quite as apparent. Or you could get somebody to professionally touch it up. But there's some light impressions back here. Otherwise, not too badly chewed up or anything. Somebody has replaced our strap buttons for strap locks. Looks like the Dunlop style. And of course, if you love Buckethead, you have to use a #1 stretch strap. This is one of the Canadian-made ones, though, not the original German design. But that's what the counterpart to that strap lock looks like. But these did not come with these straps. However, if we ever do get a custom shop release, that would be awesome. Case candy. So now we're going to move on to the neck. Here's our white paper towel next to the white finish. It's pretty matching, but you can kind of see how the neck has yellowed, and there's actually even a little bit of a reddish tint to it. Right here in this area, kind of a reddish brown tint. I'm not exactly too sure what that is. I mean, I cleaned this up the best I could, so I don't think it's dirt, but it could just be like embedded within the finish. But here's our Schaller locking tuners. Very few studios did come with the locking Grovers. Personally, that's the version I want in my collection because I just like the look of them a little bit better. But this one dates to 2011. All said and done, despite being giant oversized guitars, they're usually pretty light. This one is 8 pounds, 4.4 ounces. Obviously, the chambering helps a lot with that. So let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how this one sounds. As you can tell, it's a massive sounding guitar. That's the clean channel, believe it or not. The hot ceramic pickups helps drive it, but neck pickups just so good. contrast your bridge. Very bitey, bright, but yet full if you don't have it split. And then both of the pickups together. Very ethereal sounding. But now let's have some fun. So there we go, the Buckethead Studio redocumented again. They're just unbelievable guitars. Do you have to be a Buckethead fan to love these things? Not necessarily, but it definitely helps. This is one of those guitars where the 496R 500T works incredibly well, and in my opinion, no other guitar sounds exactly like this one with the coil splits. It's got something special with the Buckethead signature. Whether you use the kill switches or not, they're there, they're fun, they're just big, they're oversized, they're chambered, they do the whole resonant sound frequency with the nice feedback. They bring out the best of you as a player, but it definitely takes some getting used to. And if you're not a tall person, you're probably not gonna like these that much. But if you are a bit of a bigger player, you might enjoy these more so than regular Les Pauls if you've always felt that they look small on you. I always thought it was a shame that they only ever made these in Buckethead format because there's so many people who can't get past the look of these guitars. But if they would just sit down and play with them, I think an oversized Les Paul does belong within the world, even if it doesn't have to have the Buckethead outfit. They just sound so fantastic. But I hope you enjoy your new knowledge on the Buckethead Studio. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day. And you might even enjoy this next one.